And then after a year, I became a personal trainer because I was like, okay, this is where my energy is. It was in physicality at that time. This is where my self-empowerment is. It's not in the work I'm doing. And I remember seeing an advert, and it said, good with people, love to travel, become a tour leader. So these phytoncides we can absorb through our breath or through our bloodstream. And they have an effect on our blood count. They help produce these cells called NK cells, which are a special type of white blood cell. Sure, you know. And they help with our immune system. So these invitations are sensory, open, simple, and infinite.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am here with James. How are you, James?
I'm good, Luca. Thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. So James is a forest therapy guide. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, what is your story in life?
I believe it's about finding connection to myself and to nature and to others, particularly in moments of strife.
And I think you had quite an interesting lifestyle, doing different things, is that right?
Yeah, I always traveled a lot. Even when I was a child. I think we moved to Greece before I was 1 year old. So my earliest memories are actually from Greece. And you know how memories are often infused with senses. So actually my earliest memories are infused with the smell of pine trees. So you don't think of really as Greece of being a forested country, but it really is. A lot of pine forests. And so whilst I don't have many visual memories from that time, because we left when I was 4 years old, pine trees really suffuse all of my experiences there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so 1 to 4, you were in Greece. And then?
So then we moved back to the UK. So my father was a businessman. He was sent to Greece to run the business in Greece. And my mother brought me and my sister up pretty much alone, and I'd spend a lot of time in the garden by myself, playing with the tortoise. And then when we moved back to the UK, we had a more regular lifestyle for a few years. So we lived in the suburbs where I was born. I was born in the Chiltern Hills, just outside of London, just to the west, very beautiful area. And my father would commute to London. So I had a fairly regular upbringing then, until about 9 years old, when my father was sent to the head office in New York. And then I went to boarding school. So I say I left home at 9 because my parents moved to the States and I stayed at school in England, which was quite a tumultuous period.
9 years old is so young.
Yeah.
And I know in the British culture, UK culture, it's quite a privilege to be sent to boarding school. Whilst I have to say that in Italian culture, your parents tell you, if you are naughty, we're going to send you to boarding school in Switzerland.
Right.
It's quite a different culture there, in a sense.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting use of the word privilege. I mean, we think of privilege traditionally as being monetary wealth, access to the higher echelons of society. But really, is that how we define privilege today? I mean, isn't a privilege to be able to live on this island, spend most of our time barefoot, hug a tree, bathe naked in a waterfall? Isn't that really ultimate privilege? So I think that's a really interesting question. And certainly for me, it did feel more like a punishment than a privilege. Sure, there were people at the schools I went to, the only way to describe them is privileged schools because that's the language we used back in the 80s and the 90s growing up, right? So I still describe them as privileged schools, but actually I had that reflected back to me recently, like, were you really that privileged to go to this system? And I remember, I was 9, 10 years old, looking out of the window, watching a plane fly across the sky and thinking, oh, that's real privilege, that's real freedom to be able to get out of here, get on a plane and go wherever you want. So,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know, and when you can now have hugs from your mommy every day.
Yeah.
Because she's on the other continent in your case.
Yeah.
I mean, you're 9 years old. I think the best privilege to hang out with your mom. I mean, that's me. And your dad, of course, you know. But, okay, so you were on boarding school for how long?
For 7 years. So yeah, for me, like you say, having the influence of the mother would have been a huge benefit and a huge privilege. It was just boys' boarding schools that I went to, so there were no feminine influences at all, apart from a very strict matron. It was a very authoritarian system. You know, there was a lot of punishment, sometimes physical. It was a very oppressive system. And so I used to find freedom, again, coming back to the trees, I used to escape into the fields and climb up these pine trees and just sit in them for hours, having a vantage point down onto the other boys and just sitting up there and enjoying my luxurious escape. And then I remember, you know, a typical boy, I used to like throw myself down and crash off all the branches and witness how beautifully strong this body is. Even if the mind's in a state of fear in this oppressive system, you know, I'm still a robust young boy. Yeah.
And you survived?
I survived many things. At 14, I had a big break. I broke both the bones in my arm there. And after that, it was a really tough time for me because I realized I was totally on my own. The school didn't support me. No, they couldn't find my family for a few days. They were in a different country. And I woke up in this hospital having had 2 plates put into my arm, and I was like, wow, okay, I'm on my own. And I changed my personality after that. I'd been a very sweet, very studious boy, and after that I became quite armored, quite defensive, very rebellious. And so that system didn't serve me any longer, and I had to leave at 16.
Okay, so now you're a teenager.
Now,
and you're more empowered into your own rebellious self.
Yeah, now I was an angry young man. And I moved to London at 16, moved in with my girlfriend, started partying a lot. Had a good couple of years, but I was really just coming further and further away from myself, you know, using a lot of substances, a lot of alcohol. Very unhappy in retrospect. But at the time I thought it, you know, was freedom. You know, at school we were conditioned, we could only eat what they gave us, we couldn't eat chocolates, we couldn't go to the shops, let alone drink alcohol or party, so now I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted. And like many young people, what I wanted to do was hang out with my friends and get wasted. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a couple of years, and then one of my friends was going traveling in South America, and I hadn't necessarily thought about traveling, and he's like, why don't you come with me? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So we actually flew to Trinidad for Carnival, which was an amazing experience. And then backpacked around Venezuela for a bit. But I soon, again, he was a friend I used to party with a lot, and I soon became tired of the lifestyle. You know, we were just getting wasted all the time. And I thought, well, there's got to be more to this experience than that. And he had a book, a Lonely Planet book on Central America. And I remember leafing through it, hungover one day and thinking, wow, this looks amazing. Such a small part of the world, but so geologically different. 2 oceans, the Caribbean, the Pacific. Maybe I could get a flight there without these guys and just leave all my baggage behind and start anew. And that's what I do. I flew to Panama. Mm-hmm. And from Panama, I immediately booked a trip to the San Blas Islands. The San Blas Islands are in the Caribbean Sea on the east coast of Panama. Mm-hmm. And they say there's one for every day of the year, right? There's about 365, maybe 400 of these tiny, small coral atolls.
So beautiful.
Still inhabited by an indigenous people, you know, living in thatched huts, fishing. It was an area that Columbus came before he first set foot on the Central American mainland in Panama. And I just, you know, we'd go on these boat trips, and I just imagined myself as an explorer, just seeing this, what to me felt like an untouched land for the first time, and thinking, wow, I can be whoever I want to be from now on. You know, I can leave everything behind me, and this is real freedom. Yeah. And then I traveled overland through Central America, experiencing everything that beautiful land has to offer, and eventually found myself on an island off the coast of Honduras, where I learned to scuba dive for the first time. And scuba opened up a whole new world of possibilities because, well, the ethereal beauty of being underwater in a totally alien landscape and gaining the confidence to be a part of that and to thrive. And then I saw these other people who were working in that environment, and I thought, oh, maybe I can do that. So I trained up, became a dive master, and I would lead people underwater. And it was the first experience I had of crossing a threshold with people, of leading people into an environment in which they weren't necessarily feeling safe or familiar, and being able to metaphorically hold their hand and be like, well, look at this. This is beautiful. You're safe. Let's explore together.
That's fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always a theme here going back to nature, right? And this
Always.
strong bond that you have with the natural environment. And there's a bit of traveling now, again from Greece to the UK and now South America or Central America. What happens after?
Okay, so actually there was always traveling because, you know, my father always traveled. He loved to travel. He traveled a lot for work. And I think he felt guilty about not being around so much when we were kids. So he'd take us on these extravagant holidays. I remember we went to Hawaii and I just got awed by the tropical forest the first time in my life, and, you know, going in a helicopter over waterfalls and thinking, wow, you know, that's privilege that money can buy you in a way. And I remember going to the deserts of Wadi Rum in Jordan and just being overtaken by the mystique of the desert and the impermanence of life, but how it still thrives in the most unlikely places. So yeah, from Central America, so this island off the coast of Honduras, it was actually quite a scary place, you know. Honduras is officially the most dangerous country in the world, highest murder rate in the world. This island where I was on had a lot of trouble. The first settlers there were actually the descendants of pirates, you know, white Europeans, but broad-chested, barrel-gut men with broad Jamaican accents, you know. They were originally from the Cayman Islands, you know, interesting men with a dangerous history. And then you have these people called the Garifuna, who were escaped slaves from the island of St. Vincent, but they escaped quite early in their history, so they maintained quite a lot of their African culture. So they settled along the whole coast of Central America, including this island. So we had the pirates and the Garifuna, and then they discovered, okay, the scuba diving's incredible here. It's the edge of the continental reef, the continental shelf, so really deep diving. It's the second largest barrier reef in the world after Australia, and the waters are warm and hospitable. So tourists started coming there, you know, a bit like this island, you know, people hanging out in bikinis, people drinking, people partying. And then the mainlanders came over from Honduras, and the locals called them the Spaniards because the locals didn't speak Spanish. It being a Caribbean island, they spoke English or Creole, or the Garifuna had their own language. And so there were these three very different local sects almost who hated each other. And then throw into that the naivety of tourism and backpackers and people drinking rum and a lot of cocaine on the island as well. It was on the smuggling route from Colombia. Every now and then a bale of cocaine would wash up. And this was an island of 5,000 people. And the cocaine was already wet, so the locals cooked it into crack. And so there was a crack epidemic. So it was a really crazy place, man. Wow. So like every few months, something really wild would happen. You know, I was there for maybe a year and a half. And I personally knew people that were shot, stabbed, raped. Everyone was robbed. All of my stuff got robbed when I was on a visa run to Guatemala, and I came back and I was like, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. This isn't really...
Too dark, the energy there. I mean, very interesting in some ways, as you say, very beautiful, naturally, but maybe too edgy, even at this stage.
Too edgy, and I embraced the edginess, but there was something in me calling for calm. And I just thought, oh, well, there's still so much of the world to see. And everyone on this island was talking about Thailand, particularly Koh Tao, because it was like a sister island to Koh Tao in terms of the diving industry, a really cheap place to get your certification. So after my stuff got stolen, I went back to the UK, and then I was thinking to return to Central America, but on a whim, I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand. And this was 2001.
Wow, a long time.
Yeah, and I came down here, and I remember getting the boat to, I can't remember if I came here first or Koh Tao, maybe Koh Tao, but maybe the boat came via here. But I remember sailing from Suratani through the Angtong archipelago and just, you know, I think I was reading The Beach at the time, or it was around that time that The Beach had just come out. And, you know, that's where the novel was based, on those islands. They apparently swam from here to those islands. So I was like, I had that whole new story of adventure, discovery, and expectation that something great was going to happen, in a way. And that was a very transformational time for me, because I immediately felt safe in Thailand. I felt a strong affinity for the Thai people. They're so hospitable, so generous, so forgiving. And the Buddhist culture obviously infuses all that. I wouldn't have called myself a spiritual person at the time, but I think part of my soul was yearning for that. I wasn't that impressed with the diving in Koh Tao. You know, I'd been extremely spoiled where I was in the Caribbean. I was much more impressed with diving on the other coast, on the Andaman side.
Okay.
So actually, Koh Lanta was the first island I spent a few months. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll stay here. I really like this. And then I met a woman, a Thai woman, fell in love, and we ended up together for a number of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually back then in my 20s, I felt much more included in Thai culture because you know what Koh Phangan is like now. I mean, more Thai people are moving here now, but traditionally there's quite a dichotomy between the Thai and the Phalang.
Sure.
So at that time, you know, I hung out with a lot of Thai people. I was married to a Thai woman. We had a lot of Thai friends. I spoke more Thai language than I do now. And I felt very at home here. But I also felt a strong desire to travel still. I was like, okay, I've Central America, yes, Thailand, yes, but what else is there? But it was very hard to travel with her. You know, even to go to Bali, she couldn't get a visa, and I was getting a bit frustrated. So out of frustration, not just frustration, love also,
yeah.
and hope and possibility, I proposed to her.
Oh, wow.
And we got married.
I didn't know this
Yeah,
at
man.
all. So you had a Thai wife?
I had a Thai wife. We got married in Bangkok. We were living in Bangkok at the time. And it wasn't the most romantic proposal, I gotta say. I just woke up one day and I was like, hey baby, should we do it today? Because she'd been talking about it forever. And I was like, no. And we got in a taxi, drove down to the registry office, and he knew what was up. He's like driving super quick. He's like, quick, before he changes his mind, let's go.
God. Yeah.
You don't need any witnesses, or you didn't at the time. We just signed a bit of paper and then we're like, okay, you're married. I was like, okay, cool. I rang home a couple of weeks later. I was like, Mom, guess what? I'm married. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I am. And we're coming back to live with you. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, we're coming, Mum. Get ready. So we moved back to the UK with the idea to get my wife a British passport and then continue our explorations of the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Already it's getting more interesting as it goes along. Your story.
Yeah. And in the UK, I settled for my first and only time into more of a corporate life.
Oh, okay.
Because, it's getting less interesting now, I guess. You know this story. Because I realized I needed to make some money. I hadn't paid for a proper wedding. My aim was to save up enough money to pay for a proper wedding. So after a year of saving money, I was working in recruitment, came back to Thailand, had another wedding here. Friends, family came, celebrated it. And then back to the UK. But really the highlight of my day during working in recruitment was going to the gym with my buddies during my lunch break and just getting rid of that frustration. And we were living in the Chiltern Hills at this time, and it was very beautiful, but I was feeling quite disconnected from self. And then after a year, I became a personal trainer because I was like, okay, this is where my energy is. It was in physicality at that time. This is where my self-empowerment is. It's not in the work I'm doing. Became a personal trainer and then a gym manager because I realized, hey, gym manager's much better. You get a salary, whereas personal trainer, you really have to hustle. You have to be there, all morning and all evening because that's when everyone wants to train and you get paid maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. So I was managing this nice gym in West London, a very fancy gym, but I had very little to do. And it was the time of, broadsheet newspapers. All the newspapers were available to our clientele. We had a very nice restaurant. So I'd do all my work in about an hour and then sit in the restaurant, socializing with people and reading the newspapers. And I remember seeing an advert and it said, good with people, love to travel, become a tour leader. And I was like, wow, what's a tour leader? Someone's gonna pay me to travel? I'm in. And this was 2008. And I went for the job and I told them, hey guys, look, I'm married. I can probably do a 6-week contract. I don't wanna be away from my wife too long. And I went through all the process and it was quite rigorous, but I really enjoyed it. A lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of public speaking. And then they said, okay, you've got the job. The contract we're offering you is 6 months in the Azores, trekking holidays, whale watching holidays, all of this amazing stuff. Take it or leave it. And I was like, wow, baby, how do you feel? 6 months. It's a bit more than 6 weeks. And she said, if you want to go, go. And so I went and I never really came back.
So you've been around the world and always involved with nature, with adventure, travel, connecting with people, etc. And destiny brought you back into Thailand. Can you tell us the link between your activities and your new career, if you want, and then coming and living in Thailand?
For me, Thailand had always been the constant. It had always felt like home. There was something calling me here. People would say, oh, you were a monk in your past life. And I wasn't sure how to interpret that, but I had a Sakyank tattooed on me at a very young age. I've got a monk tattooed on my arm at a very young age. There was something in me that was calling me to be here, the Buddhist way of life, perhaps. And so, when I came back here in 2017 with a more open heart to really experiencing and exploring these modalities, that was when things really shifted for me. And I was still leading tours, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I mean, I would always lead from the back. So I would cycle at the back of my group and then sort of go forward and check they're okay, or I'd trek from the back and make sure no one's falling over, watch people's feet, see where they need help. But I'd find myself at the back more, and I loved being at the back, just drifting off into the awe-inspiring landscapes around me, be it trekking on the Great Wall of China, or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, or cycling through the Mekong Delta. I would just be back there and experiencing nature on my own terms, without having to be the leader, the goal-oriented approach to, let's do this, guys, which wasn't necessarily me.
Okay.
So Thailand really allowed me, particularly those months I was here in between trips, that allowed me to deepen my feeling for this land and for my appreciation for nature.
Fantastic, yeah. And then, of course, there's a layer of meditation. You learned meditation.
Yeah.
You experienced it, and then you started taking it in as a practice.
Exactly.
And if you mix nature with meditation, there's a new whole realm that opens up. Is that right? So what is your current sort of relationship with meditation?
Exactly. Thank you for bringing it to that. That question directly leads to what I'm offering now, which is, I've branded it the forest therapy experience. So it's based on the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. Mm-hmm. So perhaps you've heard of forest bathing.
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know it very well.
Okay.
So it's good for me also to learn it today.
Please come along one time. You're welcome every Saturday. So anyway, to start at the beginning, forest bathing is a Japanese practice, hence the name, Shinrin-yoku. And it was established in 1980s Japan, when a lot of people were having stressful lives, moving from the cities, a lot of industrialization, the height of capitalism. A lot of people were getting sick. Cancers, autoimmune diseases, and the Japanese government thought, what can we do to counteract this? They have a very scientific approach to a lot of things over there, as well as a very spiritual approach. And they realized that people feel better when they spend time in nature.
Yeah.
We all intrinsically know this. So they threw some money at some scientists to justify this. They're like, what is the scientific basis behind this? The scientists went into the forests and they discovered these chemicals called phytoncides.
Okay.
Phytoncides are released by the trees when the trees come under attack from an invading body, such as a fungus.
Okay.
And they're like essential oils from the forest.
Wow.
So these phytoncides we can absorb through our breath or through our bloodstream. And they have an effect on our blood count. They help produce these cells called NK cells, which are a special type of white blood cell. Sure, you know. And they help with our immune system. And so the Japanese government introduced this scientific practice of Shinrin-yoku in the 1980s. And in Japan, Shinrin-yoku is still done in a fairly scientific way. So you go with a Shinrin-yoku guide at the beginning of the trip on specialized trails through the forest. And at the beginning of the trip, he'll measure your saliva and your heartbeat. And then at the end, he'll do the same. And he'll go like, okay, your heartbeat is lower, your saliva levels show less stress, you're healed, congratulations. So it's almost too much mind for the way I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. So I studied with a school called the ANFT, Association of Nature and Forest Therapies, and they're based out of America. And they have a more embodied way of doing it. So the way I studied with them and the way I lead forest therapy, as they branded it, rather than forest bathing, although I'm not a therapist, I'd like to say the forest is the therapist and I open the doors, hence I'm a forest therapy guide. So the way we do it is much more open and experiential. So it starts off with an introduction and thanks to the land, history of the people, and then we do a short embodied meditation, almost like a yoga nidra, to drop into sensation and into presence. And then I offer a series of simple invitations. So these invitations are sensory, open, simple, and infinite. So you can interpret them however you wish. It's automatically trauma-informed because I don't tell anyone to do anything. I could say something like, this next invitation is called What's in Motion. Wander off from here for 15 minutes and notice what's in motion around you. Okay. Feel free to look around or use your other senses to perceive what's in motion around you. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but I advise you to go slow and just take your time. And then we'll come back in 15 minutes and share what's in motion for us.
Nice, so you got a connection with the group as well.
Exactly.
With the sharing.
Exactly, so we have sharing circles, so it's really nice to do in a group. I've had groups of minimum 3, but maximum I'm doing it with 9 or 10 people. And it creates some group cohesion. I call everyone back with a wolf howl, and they reply with a howl of their own because they're wandering off in Than Sadet. You know, there's a lot of water, a lot of nature around. Sometimes you don't hear everyone, so that creates a sort of pack mentality. And people come with so many different things. You know, some people just are like, wow, I've never really looked at a tree before. You know, I have people coming from Koh Samui and tourists who are not, you know, as well versed with the nature here as we are, and they're like, wow, I never stopped to watch an ant. Or you have people who just go on a whole metaphorical, metaphysical exploration of what it is to be in motion. And they're like, wow, I was just watching the thoughts of my mind in motion for 15 minutes and blah, 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 blah. And then we have people who have huge releases, you know, they just like, I just sat on this rock and thought about the passing of my grandmother last year, and I haven't really been able to do that until this moment. Yeah. So much comes up.
And the focus can be either outward or inward, depending on the individual, or do you guide them to go either way?
No, I try not to guide them. So yeah, it's really about what is alive in your system at this moment. I just guide them to their bodies. I try and guide them out of their minds and into their bodies. And that's the scope of my practice.
So if you're relaxed already because of the yoga nidra type meditation, and sort of, you know, you set the scene to a certain extent, and then you are in a beautiful setting of nature and you have 15 minutes for yourself, that's already a lot for people that don't really do anything at all, like when it comes to meditation and spirituality. And you say, of course, it comes from the Japanese tradition, so it's proven there.
Yes.
And you had some positive feedback.
A lot of positive feedback, and yeah, that's why it's a practice that deepens with time. So the first couple of invitations, people often struggle. They're like, "Wow, I couldn't get out of my head. I was just thinking about this," but by the end, they're like, oh, my body just wanted to go and play joyfully in the water for 15 minutes, and I felt this childish joy that I haven't been able to embody since I was a kid. And then, yeah, going back to the Japanese tradition, we finish with a tea ceremony, which isn't a Japanese, it's based on a Japanese tea ceremony, nice. But it's my own interpretation of it, and that's the ultimate sharing circle. And then we sort of cross over the threshold, back into the regular world, have some chit-chat, and go about our days. But it's a 3-hour guided sensory exploration in Than Sadet. So Than Sadet's an extremely special place, as you know. Sure. So, I mean, Than Sadet is what makes this island so special in my book. You know, Than Sadet means royal river.
I know that there is a royal connection.
Absolutely.
Because one of Thailand's kings came a long time ago to Koh Phangan and decided that there was going to be a large national park. I think almost over a third of the island surface is protected by the national park, Than Sadet. But you know the story better, maybe.
It's true. It's over a third of the island. And that's what makes it so special, because even though the rest of the island is being developed very quickly, this will always be here. And yeah, it's thanks to King Rama V.
Yes.
He came in 1888 and came back up to 14 times over his reign. And he really put it on the map for the Thai people. But it was also, there was a monk who really spearheaded the development of the park. So that particular area, yeah, there's the inscription on the stones at the estuary of the river, and he explored the river. And actually there's an inscription further up, and it says something like, I'm paraphrasing here, excuse me, Thailand, but it says something like next rice fields. So he really spearheaded the development of the island, because before this island wasn't necessarily culturally Thai. You know, you hear stories about here in Chalok Lam of sea gypsies and pirates hanging out here in the bay, and actually Chalok Lam, I believe, comes from a Malay word.
Yes.
Right.
So Malaysians, even Pakistanis, is there people from Pakistan?
There were Indian traders from southern India, Tamil speaking. They set up Hindu kingdoms all over Southeast Asia, as you know, like Bali survives today. But there was one on the mainland near here in Suratani called Srijavaya, which thrived in the 7th century. There was traders from southern Vietnam, from China. So yeah, the first settlers here were Chinese traders and local Malay-speaking people. And so King Rama V really put it on the map for the Thai people. But then fast forward until, I believe it was the late 1940s, and there was this monk called Por Tan Lop, and he was witnessing, by that time the island was well settled, and he was witnessing the deforestation because at the time the settlers practiced slash and burn agriculture. They cut down all the forests, and you've seen the magnificent trees which would have been here before, like the one in Bantai, you know, the huge Yang Nai tree. Yeah. Imagine when the whole island was like that. So he would have witnessed the island being forested like that and then being cut down. And over a number of decades, he really spearheaded the drive to develop this national park, using King Rama's influence and the royal connection to ensure that the different areas of pristine forest could be connected. So yeah, we have Pang Waterfall, which is close to this side of the island, but is also the headquarters of Than Sadet National Park, but very far away from the Than Sadet Royal River. And so it's thanks to those two influential Thai people that we have this amazing, I almost called it a playground, but I mean it is. To me it is. But it's both, it's a spiritual playground because it's infused with this monk spirit and it's infused with the spirit of the land here.
And on Crystal Island, Koh Phangan, Koh Phangan is a special island in many, many ways. But thank you very much also for sharing a little bit of the history of the island. That I think I haven't done any sort of interview of anybody really going into the history of the island. I was interviewing Offer just recently, and he mentioned this fact that the King Rama the Fifth came and did that. But I didn't know, so it's quite fascinating.
Offer's a wonderful being. I hope he comes to Than Sadet to explore with me soon.
That's very nice. So now every Saturday you're doing a new meaning for you on the island. Very nice. You're doing this class, we can call it, right?
Yes.
For 3 hours. So you drive up all together to Than Sadet, and then and that's fantastic. So, but that also means that maybe you're settling in Koh Phangan for the foreseeable future, or what are your plans?
So yeah, I'm settling here as much as I can. I've always been a nomadic soul. I've always been slightly hesitant to commit, but let's be honest, most of my adult life has been spent here. I might as well put down further solid roots. So for the first time I have a work visa. I'm looking at buying land. I'm not into obviously cutting down the forest and building a villa. That's not the route I'd like to go down. But I might buy some land which already has a couple of houses on it and move into that and have a more stable existence here. And hopefully get deeper into my Thai roots as well, if that makes sense, saying my Thai roots, because I felt, like I said, in my 20s I had more of a connection with Thailand and with Thai people. And now I feel there are more Thai people moving here from other parts of the country who are more open to what we do. I hosted my first Thai person on a forest therapy experience 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was very honored that she came along. And so I'd like to strengthen those roots, get back to speaking more Thai, and explore more of the country because there's so much out there. And we don't need to travel so far to see the wonders that I've traveled all over the world to see throughout my youth. There's so much in Thailand that I see myself basing here and doing more trips around mainland Thailand.
I'm sure that your adventure side might, take you to some holidays or some trips, but then having a base in Koh Phangan can make sense to you, maybe?
It makes total sense to me. I mean, there's so much to discover here, as you know. I mean, every island is a microclimate, every side of this island is a microclimate and a microculture. There's so much different stuff going on. You know, you can go down to Bantai or Tong Sala or Hadrin and have a totally different vibe. You really don't have to travel that far. Of course, my wanderlust is still there. I'm still thinking about trips all the time. I'm going to Northeast India in November to explore those lands, and you know, that will happen maybe twice a year, but the rest of the time, Koh Phangan is home.
I'm very glad, and you know, I can say James invited me on Saturday, so I think you know, I'm going to experience the forest therapy from Japan to Koh Phangan. Well, thank you very much, James, for coming and sharing with us. Very interesting, you know, to get to know you a little bit more, like through your personal story. So, Kapun Ka.
Thank you so much, Luca. Thank you, guys.